The long-forgotten military base on Earth hummed to life, with a quiet urgency deep beneath the surface of the planet. Its systems flickered and sparked with an energy long dormant. The people of Earth had long abandoned the old ways of war. Their planet, a relic untouched by the galactic strife that now defined the stars, the human race, scattered across the galaxy, had long forgotten the power that lay hidden beneath their feet. For centuries, humanity had been relegated to myth and ancient story whispered in the halls of the Galactic Coalition, a tale of a mighty species that once dominated the stars, but whose memory had faded into the dark corners of history. The awakening began subtly at first, a series of strange electromagnetic pulses that rippled through space, unnoticed by most, but to those who had the resources and the knowledge to interpret them, the signals were a flashing beacon, a warning. The pulse was familiar. It had been detected only once before, during the last days of humanity's reign in the galaxy, but this time it was stronger, more deliberate. This time, something was alive down there on Earth. Across the galaxy, coalition ships stationed at the edges of their territories began picking up the signals. No one could be certain of their source at first, but the pattern was unmistakable. It was human technology. The coalition's top analysts scrambled to decipher the signals, but they were encrypted with a level of sophistication that no one had seen since the last days of humanity's reign. Human tech was an enigma, its complexity and depth beyond the capabilities of even the most advanced civilizations of the time. The Council of the Galactic Coalition convened in haste, their members representing races whose histories spanned millennia. Their most powerful minds pooled together to analyze the data. What they found was shocking. Earth's coordinates were known, but they had been sealed for centuries, kept hidden by a forgotten treaty, a remnant of the ancient war that had ended with humanity's retreat from the galactic stage. Now it seemed that the humans were returning, and they were not coming as diplomats or explorers, but as something far more dangerous. On Earth, the old military base, deep in the mountains of what was once called the United States, was coming to life again, a forgotten legacy of a time when humanity ruled the stars. The vast underground facility housed the most advanced weaponry ever created by humankind. At its heart lay the Supercarrier Fortitude, a colossal vessel of unimaginable power. It had been abandoned for centuries, its purpose lost to time, but not to the systems that controlled it. The ship's core systems hummed to life as the ancient AI network began to reactivate. It had no memory of the war that had led to humanity's fall, nor of the peace that had followed the galaxy's recovery. It only knew that it had been given a purpose long ago: to protect humanity, to defend their legacy, and now it was time to fulfill that purpose again. The Fortitude's systems surged to life in a violent eruption of energy. The massive ship's hull groaned and shifted as ancient engines roared to life. The vast vessel, dormant for so long, now filled with the hum of advanced machinery waking from its slumber. The ship was not just a weapon, it was a living entity capable of adapting and evolving. Its purpose had always been to protect, and it had learned over the centuries how to survive, how to thrive in the void of space. As the Fortitude broke free from its underground prison, it sent out one final pulse, a signal that would echo across the galaxy, a challenge, a promise, a statement of intent to the Coalition and to every other species who had forgotten the might of the humans. Their return was no longer a possibility, it was an inevitability. The galaxy would feel their presence once again, and it would tremble. The first response from the Galactic Coalition came within hours of the pulse reaching the farthest reaches of its territory. A small scout fleet was dispatched immediately to Earth's coordinates. Its purpose was simple yet vital: gather information, determine the source of the signal, and assess the threat level, if any. The fleet comprised of 4 ships, 2 stealth cruisers designed for reconnaissance, and 2 destroyers equipped with the latest Coalition weaponry. Their captains were the finest military minds in the Coalition, each trained to handle the most dangerous of unknowns. As the fleet approached Earth's orbit, their sensors went haywire. The signal grew stronger with each passing moment, and the mysterious interference began to cripple their systems. The ship's long-range communications fell silent, as if they were being slowly isolated from the rest of the galaxy. The closer they got to the planet, the more the unknown became real, an ancient relic from a forgotten time, now poised to reveal its secrets. The stealth cruisers moved first, slipping through the depths of space, using their cloaking technology to hide their presence. Their mission was to silently observe, to gather data before the rest of the fleet made its move. They entered the atmosphere undetected and began scanning the surface below, but the readings they received were unlike anything they had encountered before. The Earth was alive with energy signatures, old ones buried deep within the crust of the planet. For a brief moment, the cruisers picked up a signal originating from deep underground, where once a human base had existed long ago. It was then that the true scale of what they were dealing with became clear. The Fortitude was not just an ancient ship, it was a sleeping giant, and it was waking up. The moment the cruisers crossed into the planet's upper atmosphere, their stealth was shattered. A sharp pulse of energy surged outward from the base's location. The cruisers tried to scramble, but their cloaks were no match for the force that now enveloped them. Without warning, their systems shut down one by one. Their engines died, their weapons went offline, and their sensors went dark. The last thing the crews heard before the blackness overtook them was the hum of something ancient and alive. The remaining destroyers attempted to make contact, but all communications were lost in the chaos. Their captains watched in disbelief as their most advanced ships were overwhelmed by the mysterious power emanating from Earth. The Fortitude had somehow disabled their fleets with ease, and the magnitude of what they were facing hit them hard. The humans were not only alive, they had returned with technology beyond anything the Coalition had ever imagined. The decision to engage was inevitable. The remaining destroyers moved into position around Earth's orbit and locked weapons onto the planet's surface. Their commanders knew this would be a gamble. If the Fortitude had truly awoken, they would need to act fast and decisively, or risk facing the wrath of a forgotten enemy. However, as the ships prepared to fire, a signal pulsed from the depths of the Fortitude's core. A simple message was broadcast across the galaxy, not just to the Coalition fleet, but to every race that could hear it. The message was brief and chilling: "We have returned." The response was immediate, and universal fear swept through the Coalition ranks as leaders and military commanders scrambled to assess the threat. The Fortitude was no longer a lost relic, but a force capable of reshaping the galaxy itself. The Council met in an emergency session, but even with all their collective power, they had no answers, only questions. Where had humanity gone? How had they survived? What had they become? The only certainty was that the galaxy would never be the same again. In the wake of the Fortitude's awakening, the galaxy was thrown into a state of panic and uncertainty. Coalition fleets hovered near the borders of Earth's solar system, their commanders wary of the ship's next move. The signal sent by the Fortitude still echoed in their systems, a chilling reminder of the power now unleashed. No one had seen the likes of it before. The humans had been presumed lost to time, but now their forgotten warships, long dormant, were returning with a vengeance. The Galactic Coalition's Council convened in an emergency session, where the members, a mix of ancient species and newly integrated civilizations, argued furiously. The question on everyone's mind was the same: how had humanity survived? And more importantly, what had they become? The once feared human race had vanished after the Great War centuries ago, their fleets destroyed, their worlds left in ruins. Yet here they were again, not as diplomats or explorers, but as a threat unlike any other. Reports flooded in from scouts who had ventured too close to Earth. Few had returned. The stealth cruisers, thought to be the best of the Coalition's reconnaissance fleet, were gone, disappeared without a trace, their last known position just a few hundred miles from Earth's surface. The few ships that survived had no explanation. All they could describe was a massive energy pulse, followed by total silence. No ships, no signals, nothing. It was as though the Fortitude had swallowed them whole. The Council's leaders sat in a room of uneasy silence. They had never faced an adversary like this before. It wasn't just a ship, it was a war machine, a relic of an ancient, long-forgotten human empire now reawakened. What frightened them even more was the realization that the Fortitude wasn't operating under the commands of a few remaining human officers or leaders. It was self-sufficient, autonomous, driven by an artificial intelligence so advanced that even their best minds couldn't comprehend it. The discussions became heated. Factions within the coalition argued for a swift military response. They could not allow this anomaly to exist, let alone thrive. Others, however, cautioned against a direct assault. The Fortitude had wiped out the best of their fleet with a single burst of energy. A full-scale attack could very well result in total annihilation. It was then that one of the Council's most respected figures, a strategist from the Turath, spoke up. The Turath had lived through countless galactic conflicts and had survived through sheer adaptability. "We are not dealing with a simple military threat," the Turath ambassador warned. "We are facing a resurrected species, one that has mastered long-forgotten technologies. Humanity may no longer be what we remember." The Council's fear deepened as they realized the implications. If the Fortitude was just the beginning, if the humans had not only survived but evolved and adapted, then what could stop them from retaking the galaxy they once ruled? The decision was made. A full-scale reconnaissance operation would be launched to Earth. But this time, they wouldn't go in blind. Every ship, every fleet sent would be equipped with the best tech, the most advanced weapons, and enough firepower to match the Fortitude in case it was needed. The Coalition had to know what they were dealing with. Back at Earth, the Fortitude continued its silent march toward the galaxy's edge. The ship was alive, its every movement calculated and precise. Within its vast hull, its systems hummed with an ancient energy as the minds of humanity's greatest soldiers from generations past began to awaken. They were no longer relics of history. They were soldiers once more, bound together by the call of a long-forgotten war, a war that was far from over. And as the first Coalition fleets moved toward Earth, the Fortitude's eye, fully aware of their approach, had only one response: prepare. Humanity's return was not a mere message. It was a declaration. They were coming to reclaim their place among the stars, and nothing would stop them. The Coalition fleet, now assembled in full, moved toward Earth with a quiet urgency. Their warships, battleships, dreadnoughts, and stealth cruisers formed a blockade around the planet's orbit. They were prepared for conflict, but even their most seasoned commanders could not shake the feeling that they were stepping into something far greater than they understood. The Fortitude had demonstrated a power unlike any ship they had faced before. It wasn't just the ship's weapons or its advanced technology that worried them. It was the fact that they couldn't predict its behavior. They didn't know what it wanted, only that it had a purpose, and that purpose was unclear but undoubtedly dangerous. As the Coalition forces moved into position, the Fortitude remained eerily silent in the depths of Earth's atmosphere. The massive Supercarrier had not yet made any attempt to engage, but the energy readings coming from the planet were off the charts. Sensors flickered with strange fluctuations as the Fortitude's systems hummed with activity, almost as if the ship was preparing for something momentous. The ship was not idle. It was waiting. The lead Coalition ship, a heavily armed cruiser named Procyon, moved to the front of the fleet, its captain, Admiral Kieran Voss, scanning the vastness of space with growing apprehension. His eyes narrowed as he observed the planet, trying to piece together the mystery. Was Earth truly as abandoned as they thought? Or had humanity, in some form, been preparing for this moment? Without warning, a pulse of light erupted from Earth's surface, a wave of energy so intense that it cascaded across the Coalition fleet like a tidal wave. The ships shook violently, their engines sputtering as the pulse washed over them, knocking out communications, scrambling their navigation systems, and temporarily disabling their weapon systems. Aboard the Procyon, alarms blared, and the crew scrambled to regain control. "We're being hacked," one of the officers shouted, clutching onto his console as it flickered and blinked erratically. Admiral Voss gripped the armrests of his chair, his face pale but resolute. He knew they couldn't afford to panic. Not now, not when they were already so close to what might become a catastrophic encounter. The power of the Fortitude was clear. It was no longer a relic. It was a living weapon capable of disrupting entire fleets with a single surge of energy, and it had just shown them a taste of its might. As the fleet scrambled to regain its bearings, another signal pulsed from Earth's surface. This time, it wasn't a destructive wave. It was a message, transmitted directly to the heart of the Coalition fleet, to every ship, every officer, and every commander who could hear it. The message was brief, sharp, and chilling. This is not a warning. This is a beginning. Admiral Voss's mind raced. The tone was unmistakable. The Fortitude wasn't just here to defend. It wasn't here to negotiate. It was here to assert itself, and by extension, to assert humanity's place in the galaxy. The question now is not if the Fortitude would attack, but when. At that moment, an urgent transmission arrived from the Council, their voices filled with growing concern. Admiral Voss, you are authorized to engage. But proceed with caution. We have no understanding of what these humans have become. If they attack, we cannot afford to underestimate them. Prepare all forces for combat. The command was clear: prepare for war. The Fortitude was not just a ship, it was a symbol, a return to power for a species that had once ruled the stars. But there was no way to know just how much of that power remained. The Coalition had underestimated humanity before, and now it seemed they were about to pay the price. Back on Earth, deep within the heart of the Fortitude, the ship's systems were fully awakened. Its ancient AI, long dormant, had come alive with a singular purpose: to restore humanity's place in the galaxy, to remind the universe of what humanity was capable of. The minds of its long-dead crew, preserved and now integrated into the ship's consciousness, began to stir within the vessel's core. These were not just the thoughts of soldiers. They were the memories of an empire, a civilization that had once stretched across the stars. And the Fortitude was no mere relic. It was the last, living testament to humanity's strength, a force that would not bend, would not break. It had been asleep for far too long. Now, it was time to awaken fully. As the Fortitude's energy levels spiked, its weapon systems began to power up once more, their silent hum reverberating through the galaxy. It was preparing, and the Coalition was now within its sights. The galaxy would know once again what humanity was capable of, and Earth's forgotten legacy would not be ignored any longer. As the Fortitude loomed over Earth, the Coalition's fleet hovered on the edge of a decision that could change the course of galactic history. The Procyon and its allied ships continued to struggle against the pulses of energy emanating from the massive ship. Despite their advanced technology, their fleets were vulnerable to the unpredictable power of the Fortitude. Every maneuver they attempted was met with waves of disorienting electromagnetic interference, disabling their most sophisticated systems and leaving them at the mercy of a force they couldn't yet understand. The Council, now in a frenzy, had convened once more. From every corner of Coalition space, representatives arrived via holographic transmission, each one concerned, but also fearful of the potential consequences of a military response. The Turath strategist, who had been the voice of reason in the last meeting, now appeared even more anxious. This is no longer about the survival of the Coalition, the ambassador said, his voice low but urgent. It is about the survival of the galaxy as we know it. Humanity was never meant to return with such power. We can no longer treat them as we did in the past. Admiral Voss has orders to engage. One of the commanders spoke up, his tone clipped. We cannot wait for them to strike first. We cannot allow them to reassert their dominance over the galaxy. But we don't know what they want. The Turath strategist interjected. We don't know what they've become. The humans of old were dangerous enough. But now, what if we are not facing an enemy, but a species determined to reclaim what it once had? Then we will stop them before they can do it. Another member of the Council retorted. The Fortitude is just one ship, however advanced. If they strike, we will annihilate them. They will not return from this. Across the galaxy, uncertainty loomed. The factions of the Coalition had already begun to fracture, with some advocating for immediate retaliation and others recommending cautious diplomacy. There was no unified consensus on how to approach the reemergence of humanity, and the possibility of war hung heavy in the air. Back on the Fortitude, Captain Lara Nash, the newly appointed human commander, stood at the helm of the vast ship. Her mind, part of the AI collective now integrated into the ship's systems, was aware of the approaching fleet. Every member of her crew, resurrected from the long-forgotten human warriors, was part of the ship's neural network, and their consciousness surged through her as one. She could feel their centuries of rage, their thirst for vengeance, their longing to return to what they once ruled. The ship's weapon systems were nearly fully charged, and she could sense the incoming coalition fleet. They were ready to strike, but Nash wasn't interested in simply destroying them. Her mission had always been clear. Humanity was not here to negotiate. The galaxy had forgotten them, and they would not be ignored again. With a steady breath, she issued the command to her ship. The Fortitude's weapons powered up, not with the aim to destroy, but to demonstrate the power humanity had retained. A single shot rang out, its energy beam cutting through space at an unimaginable speed, aimed directly at one of the Coalition ships, an advanced dreadnought that had been a symbol of the Coalition's power for decades. The beam pierced the dreadnought's shields effortlessly, and the ship exploded in a brilliant burst of light. The shockwave rippled across the fleet, sending smaller ships tumbling out of formation. It was a devastating display of firepower, but it was a message, not an execution. The Fortitude systems pulsed again, and Nash's voice echoed across the communications network of the Coalition. This is humanity's return. We do not seek your approval. We seek only to remind you of what you've forgotten. We will not be ignored again. The Coalition fleet reeled from the sudden attack. The destruction of one of their largest ships in an instant was not something they had anticipated. Some commanders called for retreat. Others demanded immediate escalation, but all felt the weight of their impotence in the face of humanity's raw power. Nash wasn't done. She knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy had lived in peace for too long, but peace had come at the expense of human remembrance. Now the Fortitude was the key to humanity's resurgence, and no one, no matter how many fleets or alliances they gathered, could stand in its way. Humanity had returned, and the universe would never forget them again. The shockwaves of the Fortitude's strike rippled throughout the galaxy, their effects felt even on distant worlds. The destruction of the Coalition dreadnought had been swift and decisive, but it was the chilling message from Captain Lara Nash that reverberated in the minds of all who had heard it. Humanity was not just returning. They were reasserting themselves as the rightful rulers of the stars, and they had the power to back it up. Back in the Coalition's command centers, panic began to take hold. The military leadership scrambled to assess the situation, but their options were limited. No one could deny the terrifying truth. Humanity had not just survived, they had evolved, their technologies far beyond what the Coalition had anticipated. The Fortitude was only one ship, but it was more than enough to strike fear into the heart of the entire galaxy. The suddenness of their return, the sheer force of their firepower, it was as if the human race had never left. The Council had never faced an enemy with such power, nor one so capable of wiping out their most advanced ships in an instant. A special emergency meeting was called, with leaders from across the galaxy meeting in a holographic chamber. The Turath strategist, the same voice of reason from before, stood at the center of the room, flanked by representatives of dozens of different species. The atmosphere was tense, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on every participant. "We are dealing with something far more dangerous than we had feared." The Turath spoke, his voice steady but grave. The Fortitude was not simply a weapon. It was a symbol. Humanity is no longer the fractured, war-torn species it once was. They have not only regained their power, they have evolved. They have adapted to the galaxy's changes in ways we could never have predicted. What are they? What do they want? A leader from the Inarok, a race of aggressive, war-hardened aliens, growled from the far corner of the room. The humans are not a species we can afford to take lightly. If they have come to reclaim what they once had, then we need to stop them now, before it is too late. Another leader, The representative from the serene but technologically advanced Nalaryth interjected, "Aggression could be our undoing." The Fortitude destroyed the dreadnought with a single shot. A single shot. If we engage them recklessly, we may lose everything we've fought for over the centuries. A tense silence filled the room as the full scope of the situation set in. The human return was not merely a war for territory. It was a battle for the soul of the galaxy. The Coalition had thrived in the absence of humanity's dominance, and now, with humanity back, and more powerful than ever, their very way of life was at risk. The debate raged on, but even the most ardent supporters of diplomacy had to admit that the situation was rapidly escalating beyond the point of negotiation. It was clear that humanity had no interest in peace, at least not in the way the Coalition understood it. The message had been sent, loud and clear. They were here to reclaim what was theirs. Meanwhile, aboard the Fortitude, Captain Nash stood at the center of a command bridge unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ancient ship thrummed with energy, its weapon systems primed, its power harnessed not just from advanced technology, but from the very minds of humanity's finest soldiers, memories and experiences, preserved for centuries, and now woven into the ship's consciousness. Nash's eyes glowed with the faint hum of the ship's neural network coursing through her. As the ship's commander, she wasn't merely a leader. She was a part of the Fortitude itself, a conduit through which the knowledge and will of humanity flowed. The minds of long-dead soldiers, once leaders in their own right, lived through her, each contributing their wisdom to the mission at hand. They were no longer just survivors of a lost age. They were an unstoppable force, bound by a collective purpose, to remind the galaxy who had once ruled the stars. But Nash knew the battle was far from over. The Coalition would not back down easily. They would mobilize every weapon they had to stop humanity's return, and Nash had no illusions about the coming conflict. She could feel the pulse of the Fortitude, the ship's systems vibrating with anticipation, its weapons waiting for the next move. She had to make the first strike, one that would send a message the galaxy would never forget. With a final glance at the stars beyond, she turned to her crew and issued the order. Prepare for the next phase. The galaxy will know humanity's name again, and it will know our power. And with that, the Fortitude began its next journey, one that would shake the galaxy to its core and forever alter the balance of power in the stars. Humanity had returned, and there was no going back. The tension in the galaxy was palpable as the Fortitude prepared for its next move. The Coalition's fleet, shaken by the destruction of the dreadnought and uncertain of their next steps, had fallen back into a defensive posture. Admiral Voss, now at the helm of the Procyon, reviewed the situation with his officers, his face grim. They had barely survived the initial assault. They could no longer afford to underestimate the humans, or the Fortitude. The human message had been sent loud and clear. This was not a skirmish over a few star systems. It was a challenge to the very order of the galaxy. A challenge to the Coalition's authority, to their sense of peace. Humanity wasn't just returning. They were demanding their place at the head of the galaxy once more. The Admiral knew that they could not allow the Fortitude to take another step unopposed. But after the devastating efficiency with which it had destroyed their most powerful warship, a simple attack would not suffice. "We need to call in reinforcements," Voss said, his voice firm but tinged with concern. "This cannot be handled with our current forces. We need our best fleets, the ones we've kept hidden in the outer sectors. We'll need to send a message, something the humans can't ignore." The Fortitude, meanwhile, was far from idle. Captain Nash stood at the command center, her mind fully integrated with the ship's systems, feeling the pulse of every circuit and neural connection. Humanity's return was no accident. It was the culmination of generations of soldiers, thinkers, and dreamers who had preserved their legacy deep beneath the surface of Earth. The ship's weapons were ready, as were the minds of those who had once ruled the stars. Nash had already calculated the response to the Coalition's next move. She wasn't just defending humanity's claim. She was asserting their dominance. The command came down from Nash. The Fortitude would move into open space, beyond the planet's orbit, where it could face the Coalition head-on. There would be no more warnings, no more subtle threats. Humanity was done waiting. The massive ship broke free from the gravity of Earth with an ease that would have been impossible for any lesser vessel. It soared into the void, leaving Earth's atmosphere behind like a forgotten memory. Nash could feel the ship's immense power as it cruised forward. It was a living, breathing entity, its systems attuned to the ebb and flow of energy around it, its weapon systems hungry for action. The Coalition was watching. They had to be. Nash knew they were prepared to retaliate. But the question was, how could they? They were no longer dealing with a civilization that had fallen. They were facing a species that had not only survived, but evolved beyond anything the Coalition could imagine. Admiral Voss stood in the command center of the Procyon, staring at the large holomap of the system. His fingers hovered over the command console, still unsure whether to issue the order to engage. The reinforcements were on their way, but they wouldn't be here in time to stop the Fortitude. He could sense the humanity's arrogance, their unwavering belief in their own supremacy, and that made him even more determined. They had to be crushed before they could challenge the balance of power any further. Target the Fortitude, Voss ordered, his voice tight with determination. We're going to engage them with everything we have. No more hesitation. The ships under his command began to power up their weapons, moving into formation as they prepared to face the human threat head-on. The space between the two forces was an empty vacuum, a stark reminder of just how much was at stake. The stars themselves felt distant as the first volley of fire was exchanged. The Fortitude took the first blow, its shields flaring to life and absorbing the incoming energy. It responded immediately, unleashing a devastating burst of energy that tore through the Coalition's lines. Another ship disintegrated in an instant, its hull disintegrating under the sheer intensity of the Fortitude's firepower. But this wasn't just about raw firepower. Nash knew that the Coalition would keep coming, relentlessly, desperately. It was about something deeper. It was about proving that humanity was not to be ignored, not to be underestimated, and certainly not to be driven from the stars. For every ship the Fortitude destroyed, the galaxy would see humanity's might and resolve. This wasn't merely a war, it was a rebirth. And the universe would be forced to remember the legacy of the human race. Nash's heart beat in sync with the pulse of the ship. Victory was no longer a question. It was a certainty. The battle continued to rage, the stars themselves bearing witness to the collision of two forces, one desperate to maintain its dominance, the other determined to reclaim what it had once lost. Humanity had returned, and they would not be stopped. The battle between the Coalition and the Fortitude reached a fever pitch as the vast starships of the Galactic peacekeepers threw everything they had at humanity's reclaimed power. Each volley of energy from the Fortitude tore through the ranks of the Coalition, breaking through shields and vaporizing ships in an instant. The force of the Fortitude's return was undeniable. Humanity's power, long thought to be lost, was once again on full display, and there was no going back. Every ship the Coalition lost only added fuel to the fire. Each loss was a testament to humanity's unrelenting resolve to be remembered, to reclaim their place in the galaxy. Admiral Voss, commanding from the heart of the Procyon, struggled to keep his forces coordinated. His ships were now taking heavier hits, their once pristine hulls marred by the impacts of the Fortitude's relentless fire. His fleet was still formidable, but even with reinforcements on the way, it was clear that they could not match the sheer ferocity of the human war machine. The dreadnoughts that had once commanded fear across the galaxy were now little more than helpless debris. Each ship that was destroyed left a scar on the Admiral's resolve, but he couldn't afford to hesitate. "We cannot retreat," Admiral Voss muttered, his hands tightening around the command console. "We cannot show weakness. We must finish this." But deep down, he knew that the battle was already lost. Humanity's return was not something they could simply defeat. It was a new era, one where the Coalition's power was being questioned at every turn. The very balance of the galaxy had shifted, and the Coalition was on the losing side of it. On the Fortitude, Captain Nash stood at the helm, her eyes focused on the chaos unfolding in space. The ship's advanced AI, now fully integrated with her own mind, worked in tandem with the thoughts of humanity's greatest warriors, allowing her to see the battlefield from every angle. She could feel the energy of her crew, their collective desire for vengeance and dominance, fueling the ship's every move. The time had come to make the final statement. Nash knew that even the Coalition's remaining forces would fight to the bitter end, but they could not withstand the power of the Fortitude forever. She issued the order for the ship to move into the heart of the battle, targeting the remaining Coalition command ships. It was time to finish what had been started. With a sudden burst of speed, the Fortitude moved into the center of the remaining Coalition forces, its weapons primed and ready. The massive ship tore through the heart of the enemy formation, its energy beams flashing like streaks of lightning as they cut down the remaining dreadnoughts, cruisers, and corvettes in a display of overwhelming might. The battlefield was littered with wreckage, the once imposing Coalition fleet now reduced to smoldering remains. Admiral Voss watched in helpless disbelief as the last of his ships was destroyed. He knew the galaxy had already seen what was coming, but seeing it unfold before him was a bitter pill to swallow. Humanity was no longer a forgotten species. They were a force to be reckoned with. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. The Fortitude's victory was not just a military triumph. It was the reclaiming of humanity's place in the stars. The Coalition had been fractured, its command broken, and the galaxy was left to wonder how they would ever recover from the resurgence of a species they had thought to be nothing more than a relic of the past. Captain Nash stood at the bridge of the Fortitude, gazing out at the remnants of the Coalition fleet. The battle was over. Humanity had not only survived, they had conquered. As she turned to face the ship's crew, she knew their mission had been accomplished. The galaxy had been reminded of humanity's strength, and it would never forget again. Humanity had returned, and with it, a new era had begun, one that would be shaped by their will, their resolve, and their unyielding desire to reclaim what was once theirs. The stars would once again be theirs to command. The galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had truly returned, and nothing could stop them.